chapter 11, starting at the first verse. I'm going to try to make this a quicker one, but usually it takes me a long time because we do verse by verse here. I don't like topical preaching per se. I mean, it's valid in some regards, but I think you don't really get the most out of Scripture unless you go verse by verse. And that having been said, Father, I thank you for your word. I thank you for it falling on good ground. I thank you for even superseding anything and overriding any limitation I might have in my ability to present it or my understanding, so that you would cause me to speak the oracles of God and set a watch over my mouth, that I would not say anything untoward, unkind, unscriptural, inaccurate, but rather that you would use me to build your people up in their faith, that they would have a clearer picture of what faith really is, how to walk in it, and how to please you thereby. In Jesus' name. All right. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Now, I've heard people say all kinds of things about this one verse, and people preach a whole message on this, and I guess you can. I'm going to try not to tonight because we got the rest of the chapter to deal with. But I'll say this. I've heard people try to say, well, faith is a substance. And they try to act like faith is some kind of spiritual chemical. And it just gets really creepy and spooky and kind of silly. Welcome back, Captain Crunky. So some people will say faith is a substance. And which kind of made me laugh at one point. It didn't really make me laugh. I found it funny, but at the same time I found it very disturbing. Because it meant they didn't really know what the passage was saying. And this is what they were teaching other people. Now, the word substance in the actual Greek is hypostasis. Now, hypostasis is a compound of two different words. One that means a support, and the other one that means kind of a confidence or an assurance. And so we got to understand that faith is the assurance of things hoped for. It's not a substance. It's not some kind of ether. It's not some kind of chemical in the spirit realm. You know, somebody please play some spooky music for me. It's not that. It is the assurance of things hoped for. Now he's not trying to merely define faith. He's telling you that faith is the assurance of that. But that doesn't mean this is what faith is. Faith is a complete and total trust in God. Now, I used to do this I had a video years ago that I used to have on GodTube back before they changed it, where they basically bury your video if you're not an advertiser. And so I got off GodTube. But I used to do this video called Real Faith Right Now. And one of the things I used to say, and I still say it now, is that faith is not the ability to believe that God is going to do what you want. It's the ability to believe that God is going to do what is right, what is best. It's trusting God no matter what happens. It's trusting God with any outcome that He chooses. Not just the outcome that we want. Now there's times where you're going to believe God for a specific outcome, and that's valid. But a lot of times we've turned this thing of faith into basically, His good pleasure. That was like His food pleasure. But it's almost like we want to turn God into our genie. You know, this is not Aladdin. You know, we don't have Robin Williams singing to us talking about you've never had a friend like me. Even though you've never had a friend like Jesus. He ain't the genie. You don't got 3 wishes. You know, and there's no, and here's the bright side of God not being the genie. He's not going to tell you, Ixnay, I'm wishing for more wishes. You can ask God for more than 3 things. But doesn't mean He's necessarily going to say yes. And one of the things we have to do if we're really going to walk in faith is we got to get back to the point where we can really trust God with whatever outcome He chooses, whatever He decides. You know, I like to talk about how when it rains, I'll ask God to make it stop raining. It'll stop raining. The sun will come out. I'll go do what I need to do, and then come back inside, and I tell the clouds you can rain now. And it starts raining right away. I'm glad that God does that for me. But there's times when it doesn't happen. It happens most of the time. Which I'm very glad for. But when it doesn't, I don't sweat it. I don't get mad. I'm not ready to, I'm not raising my fist up at God and saying, hey, what's wrong with you? If I got to get wet, I got to get wet. Still not buying an umbrella. Because like I said, it happens most of the time. And it sure ain't the Red Sea, but it'll do for now. I don't get mad if it don't go my way. According to his will, if he wants it to rain right now and he's deemed that it's better for it to rain and for me to get wet, okay, I'm cool with that. I'm just going to trust that God is doing what is best. It's a lot less stressful. I don't got to worry about, man, my prayer didn't work. Because sometimes we also treat prayer like it's some kind of, I got to do a teaching on prayer because a lot of folks think that prayer is just some kind of, like there's a formula, like it's a magic spell, man. Goodness, because people, a lot of times, they want you to teach them, what words do I need to say? It's not about the words that you say, man. That's the same thing with people who teach on faith. We have this whole word of faith nonsense that goes around. Where they basically convince people that God is like a genie. Or that, God always honors faith and you'll move God by your faith. And like if that God doesn't care about anything else, just your faith, and you can do whatever else the heck you want. And it don't really work that way. But they'll teach you that. And because life is going pretty well for them, they can make it look like it's like, how do I put it? There was a meme I saw a while back that I thought was great. I should have copied it to my computer. But it was about the whole tithing thing. It talks about, start tithing, be broke all the time. This is what it amounted to. Be broke all the time, be late on your bills, ruin your credit while you're tithing, and then start your own church. Start getting tithes from other people. Pay off all your debt. Buy a really big house, buy really nice cars, and then tell everybody else, look how God blessed me for tithing. That's not faith. And so that guy, the guy who's, living a nice lifestyle off the backs of several hundred people or several thousand people or whatever number he's comfortable with, will act like he's really walking in faith, and that's not really the case. And they'll try to get you to do things in faith that they would never do themselves. That's not faith. Now the second verse, it says, for by it the elders obtain a good report. Now there's something else I want to deal with even before we go there. And it says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The word hope in 1611 had a very different connotation from what it does now. Because we say, oh, well, I hope it doesn't rain tomorrow, meaning we'd like it not to rain tomorrow, but we're not sure if it will or not. We're expressing that we want something to happen, but we're not sure if it will. And we've got to have a little bit of expectancy that it'll happen the way we want it to, but we're not sure. That's not hope in King James English. In King James English, hope is something you are waiting for, something definite, something absolute. In King James English, I hope the sun rises tomorrow. Yes, it will rise, unless there's no tomorrow. The sun's coming up. I don't know what time it's going to come up exactly, but it's coming up. Sometime tomorrow, I'm going to get hungry. I expect to get hungry, because I will. Do you see what I'm saying? Biblical hope is not this thing where you're not sure. It's an absolute certainty. I'll put it this way, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. That is what biblical hope is. To put it in maybe more modern English that would be clearer, now faith is the assurance of what you're expecting, or what is to be expected. The evidence of things not seen. Because even though you don't see it yet, you have faith. It is the evidence. When I won't say I'm absolutely sure every time, but there are times when I do ask for it to stop raining. I know it's going to stop raining. But I have no doubt at all. When I had to ship that painting and I was outside the post office, it was pouring rain, I said, Martha, it's going to stop raining. Same thing when we went to the store to get the packing tape. And it was coming down in buckets. So it's going to stop raining. You know, we sing blessed assurance, and a lot of times we have no assurance. We don't know what that means anymore. But that having been said, it says, for by it, by faith, the elders obtained a good report. They had a good report with God. All by faith. Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. Now, some people say this implies that there's other worlds, but the word worlds there is actually aeon in the Greek, which means the ages. So it doesn't necessarily mean worlds. But anyhow, the things which are seen are made of things, are not made of things which do appear. And now we know that supposedly everything's made out of tiny little things called atoms that we can't even see. And if you talk to a good quantum guys into quantum physics, they'll tell you nothing's real. That electrons can actually be in more than one place at a time. These are things which should be impossible. And that even solid objects are not solid, they're mostly empty space. But to us they feel solid, they feel real. That everything we understand as our physical reality, if you understand, have a little understanding of quantum physics, is basically like a gigantic simulation. Everything is made of things that do not appear. But we understand this through faith because, and even though science tries to explain it, even in science there's so much faith. A lot of this stuff that they believe is just, it's hogwash. They have no way to prove it. We're supposed to believe that the world is a round, perfectly round sphere, at least according to the pictures that NASA supposedly takes from outer space. But even they admit that they Photoshop the images, and they're composite images, image splices that they put together. And if you look at NASA's pictures of the Earth, go on their website sometime. The picture they took in 2007 and the picture they took in 2012, North America is way bigger in 2012 than it was in 2007. What's happening? Did North America grow? It's funny, nobody notices that. And now the physicists like Neil deGrasse Tyson are saying that the Earth is not a sphere, it's a slightly pear-shaped oblate spheroid. It's kind of shaped like a tangerine, but a little wider at the bottom than it is at the top. And that's their way of explaining away the fact that if you try to navigate in the southern hemisphere the same way you do in the northern hemisphere, you'll get lost. It's apparently wider down there for some reason. And we call it hemisphere. So we're clearly being lied to. It's like, wait a minute. You're saying now you're saying the Earth is slightly pear-shaped oblate spheroid, but NASA's been taking all these photos where supposedly Earth is a perfect sphere. Which one of these lies is true? Now I'm saying that to say this. They exercise a whole lot of faith because they can't even prove that. The only proof we have as to the nature of the universe or the nature of astronomy as they explain it to us is their word, is the word of people who hate Christianity. That's all we have. About, 400 plus years ago, Galileo, or was it Copernicus, said that the Earth was round, and it's a sphere spinning at about 1,000 miles an hour. I think he said 1,100 miles an hour, I forget. And And they started teaching this in schools. And it's one of the first things they teach you as a little kid. The Earth is a big round ball. And we had no way to prove it. There's no way to prove it. There was absolutely no proof and no physical evidence for that. And the only evidence we have now is NASA and the other space agencies who are very secretive. You try to build a rocket to go up in outer space, they're going to shoot you down or they're going to kill you. So all we really have to go on is their word. But hey, feel free to trust the government. They tell the truth about everything else, right? And the point I'm making with this is that even in what people call science, they got to exercise a whole lot of faith. They got to exercise this faith that the Earth is spinning at 1,054 or 1,045 miles per hour, and yet somehow you can land an airplane on it. Never mind a whole bunch of the things that just don't make any sense. And that we're flying through space, going around the sun at 60,000 miles per hour. And as we're going around the sun is traveling, so we're really going in a spiral, following the sun at about almost 500,000 miles per hour. And somehow, at that speed, the stars always look the same. It takes a lot of faith to believe that. It takes a lot of faith to believe that long ago, about 15 billion years ago, there was nothing, and nothing happened to nothing, then nothing suddenly exploded and created everything. And some of this dust turned into planets, and some of that dust on that planet turned into self-replicating bits of DNA that eventually turned into dinosaurs. Faith is inescapable. You're going to have faith in something. And science, I find, requires a lot more faith. Some of the things they believe are just ridiculous. But that having been said, by faith, Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witness that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts. And by it, he being dead, yet speaks. Now, we got to understand about, he uses Abel as an example here. It was by faith that he offered a more excellent sacrifice. He offered his sacrifice because he believed God, because he believed that God was who he says he is. And so he gave the sacrifice that he did, where he could have done the same thing as Cain. Faith will move you to do things that other people won't do. Real faith always leads to action. And what you got to understand, there's no idle details in Scripture. Part of the reason why this is being said here is that your faith isn't just intended, is not just intended for your life. If you walk in true faith, your faith is supposed to continue to speak after you're dead. I mean, think about it. It's been thousands of years since Abel. We still talk about it. A lot of us, we talk about faith and we just talk about getting cars and houses and all this stuff that doesn't really matter in the light of eternity. Goodness, even people in the so-called personal development industry talk about legacy. Usually they don't until they're a little older and they realize, hey, I'm in my 50s, I probably got 20 years left. I want to be remembered after I'm gone. And then the legacy they're trying to leave is being left for selfish reasons. But they at least think of that. What is the impact that your faith is going to have after you're gone? We still read Charles Spurgeon's sermons. By it he being dead, yet speaks. Your faith should be able to outlive you. And it's not a hard thing, and we're gonna get to that. By faith, Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated it. For before his translation, he had this testimony, that he pleased God. But without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he that comes to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Enoch didn't even get to die. Enoch's still alive. Enoch is like 6,000 plus years old, or somewhere close to that. Never died. That's a testimony. Now, I don't know if that's possible for any of us in this present age. Maybe it is. I don't know. I know one guy who tries to argue that you don't even have to die, and I won't say that. That just doesn't seem to make sense, because I only know of two men in Scripture who did not die. And that would be Enoch and Elijah, apparently, because Elijah was also taken away by God. So that appears to be something exceptionally rare, since we have only two instances of that in the entirety of recorded human history. Wouldn't mind it myself, but that having been said, it was by faith. Now, it wasn't, and I want to make this clear, because we think faith is just this ephemeral thing, there's this mystical thing where I believe and therefore nothing else matters. No, Enoch's faith was what provoked him to righteousness, because he really believed who God was. He really believed in God's righteousness, his holiness, etc., etc. And because he really believed, his life reflected that belief. That's one of the things I'm fond of saying, is that an intention without a decision is just a wish. And you haven't decided anything if you haven't taken action. It's like saying, I have decided I'm going to lose weight, but you keep on eating a lot. You don't pick up any weights, you don't go for a walk, you don't do any exercise, you didn't decide anything. Decision always implies action. And it's the same thing. Faith will always provoke you to action. Doesn't mean you're not earning anything from God. Faith makes you want to do stuff. Because I believe that God is real, and I believe that his people need to be taught. I'm on here almost every day, sometimes a few times a day. Because I absolutely believe that it's needed. And Enoch did whatever it was he did. We don't know a whole lot about him. We know some stuff from the book of Enoch, but a lot of people say that's not scripture, even though I won't say it's scripture, but Jesus appears to quote from it about 7 times. The Epistle of Jude takes a direct quote from it. So Jude and Jesus, at least, appeared to think that the book of Enoch had some kind of validity. And but it's impossible to please God without it. It was because of faith that Enoch was able to please God. And like it says, he that comes to God must believe that he is. So you have to believe, one, that God is. And some of us will say, I believe in God. Which God? Because a lot of times, a lot of us, and I have to agree with Paul Washer on this, a lot of people, they serve a God who exists only in their imagination. They don't really believe in the God of the Bible. Because the God that you go to the average megachurch, the God they believe in, the God they worship, and has no wrath, he has no justice, he makes no demands. God doesn't request holiness from you, he commands it. Now, it's not called the 10 Suggestions. So a lot of times people say, I believe in God. You start asking them some questions about what they believe about God, and they'll tell you whether they really believe in God or not. So you have to believe that He is. And you also have to believe that He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. Does God reward those who seek Him? And that can be challenging for a lot of people. I've known some people, myself included, who've been through some stuff and have been through some, oh my goodness, some horrible stuff. And it became really hard to believe that God would ever do anything nice on my behalf because of everything I've been through. You have to be able to believe, you have to choose to believe that He does reward those who diligently seek Him. But remember, it says diligently seek. You know, attending a prayer meeting once a month is not diligently seeking God. You know, a lot of churches will often bemoan how nobody comes to the prayer meetings. Well, it's not surprising. They don't have a prayer life at home. Why would they come? Why would they come to the church to pray? You know, for a while, the church I used to go to was trying to do prayer every day at 6 p.m., which wasn't possible for everybody because some people had to work. And you saw some spiritual growth in people, but as soon as the church stopped doing it, these people just kind of fell off because without that, they didn't really bother to have much of a prayer life. And the reason for it is simple. They were weak in their faith. You know, I don't have to have somebody drag me to church to pray. I already know He's real. Goodness, everything I've been through, I'd be an idiot not to believe at this point. Yeah, somebody's trying to invite me to something again. But He is a rewarder. He may not reward you now. He may not reward you this year or next year. But He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. Are you being diligent? And the thing is, genuine faith. And faith is a choice. This is not just merely believing, it's trusting Him. Because to believe that He is a rewarder of those diligently seek Him, you have to trust Him that He is going to reward as He sees fit. You have to trust that somehow, some way, He's going to make something out of whatever is going on. The next verse is, by faith Noah, being warned by God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house, by the which he condemned the world, and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. The whole building of the ark was by faith. Some people like to say grace didn't save Noah, obedience did. And that's another thing. Real faith results in obedience. He believed God, so he built the ark. And here's the thing, something else you got to understand about faith. When God has you in a position where you are warning people and all that, sometimes God isn't looking to save everybody. That ark was only designed to hold a bunch of animals and 8 people. And it says, by the which he condemned the world. That by being moved with fear and preparing the ark, actually, that was the condemnation of the world. And I know we don't like to say this these days because we're supposed to be greasy gracers and all that. Yeah, there's Shamar 16. But your faith will actually condemn the world. Because you believe they didn't. Everyone who's ever known you and witnessed your faith and saw your faith. This is part of why this is so important, because your very life is supposed to be a testimony. that when they have to stand before God, everybody who's ever known me who didn't get saved, who chose not to believe the gospel, they're going to have to answer to God. Those guys that I worked with at that landscaping company back in 1998, who saw me command a thunderstorm to stop, black clouds, lightning, heavy rain, and I can't remember my exact words, but I said something like, "Clouds, I command you to withhold your water and let the sun come out." They all laughed. About 2 or 3 minutes later, the sun was shining, the birds were singing. I looked at them as we were clocking out, and I said, "That's 9 coincidences." They saw that happen more than once at that job. There's going to come a day when they're going to stand before God, and He's going to ask them, "Why didn't you believe?" I sent Sam to work with you guys, to work with you so you would see that I am real. Your faith and the demonstration thereof will leave others with no excuse. Now, some people will say that sounds cruel. It's not cruel. It's actually the mercy of God. And the mercy of God can seem like cruelty at times. Because being a Princeton graduate, I had no business working landscaping. I should have been working a great job, but I couldn't get a great job. So there I was, stuck working for I think it was like $7.50 an hour, doing backbreaking physical work with a bunch of people who could, most of whom could not even speak English. That was the caliber of work that I got. The kind of work people get when they're immigrants and can't even speak the language. And one day they're gonna have to explain themselves to why they didn't believe. They saw this happen and still chose not to believe, still chose to live in sin. It's not just Noah condemning the world. No, it's not that our goal is to condemn the world, it's just that it happens to condemn them because they've seen the evidence. They've seen the demonstration of someone else's faith. And it goes on to say, by faith Abraham, when he was called out into a place which he should receive for an inheritance, obeyed. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. And then apparently, he wasn't even exactly sure where God was sending him. Seems that he knew he was going to Canaan because his father was going to go to Canaan, but then they stopped in Ur and they stayed there. And his father died, and then they went on. Then Abraham left. But it was by faith he obeyed. He obeyed because he believed. And then we come back to that again. Real faith leads to obedience. You believe God, obey him. Trust him with the outcome. Even in business, I know a guy who's oh man. It's not that you need help, you're just trying to be a troublemaker. You have a good one. Take care. Yeah, that guy's father doesn't have cancer. There's just somebody, his name's called Heckleback. Go figure. This isn't rocket science. It's not that hard. Now, I'm not saying you gotta have faith to shut the mouths of lions tonight. Goodness, at least trust God with whatever's going on in the business world is a thing. I know a guy he's a motivational speaker and he does consulting for banks and stuff like that, sales training and things like that. And something he likes to say is you need to have high intentionality and low attachment to the results. And And this is a problem for a lot of us. We're very attached to the results. If we don't get the result we want, we're discouraged, we're defeated, we're sometimes angry at God. Don't be so attached to the results. Like I said about the whole rain thing. If it still rains, I'm cool. Maybe I'm a little disappointed. I'm like, oh man, I'm now going to get wet. But like the other day I walked to the mailbox to go get something that's about, I don't know, about a kilometer down the road, maybe a little less. That's probably about a 6 or 8 minute walk. And it started to rain. I asked God to let it stop raining, and He didn't until I was like almost done getting home. And it stopped raining all of a sudden. But I didn't get very wet. It was just like a little mist. It wasn't a big deal. But I didn't get mad at God. I'm not attached to the result. I'm glad if the result is what I asked for, but if it's not, I try not to be too attached. And the thing is, if you understand this principle, this will even help in relationships with people. We get very attached to outcomes that we want, even in relationship. And I don't know why I'm saying this, but I'm going to say this. That's why we end up not cutting, we're married and we don't even cut our spouse any slack. Okay, they didn't do what you wanted, big deal. Okay, they said something you didn't like, or maybe they were a little crabby that morning. They said something, let it slide. Don't be so attached to the result of there was a conversation you're trying to have, and there's a certain outcome you want because there's something you wanted them to do, or you wanted them to do it a certain kind of way. Don't get so attached. Most of the things that married people fight about are things that don't even matter. Most of it. We make mountains out of molehills all the time. And we allow the enemy to get so much more than a foothold. He gets footholds, handholds. He's got his favorite chair in the living room practically for a lot of us. This is by faith. He sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. God promised him this land, and he lived in it as a stranger. He lived in tents. He lived in the city before, but now Abraham lived in tents. Not that he lived badly. Abraham was quite rich, so it was probably a pretty nice tent. But he lived in it like if he was a foreigner, because he was, technically. And so he looked for a city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. What are you looking for? If you can honestly answer that question as to what you are looking for, you'll know exactly where you stand in your faith. That's another problem with a lot of us. We won't take an honest look. We can ask ourselves that question, and we won't even give ourselves an honest answer. It's like J.P. Morgan used to say, people usually have two reasons for what they do. The real reason and one that sounds good. And a lot of us won't even admit to the real reason most of the time. And there really shouldn't be those two reasons, but most of the time, for most people, that's what you got the real reason, one that sounds good. Like that lady who said she was the chiefest apostle, and that she took on that title as a sign of humility. That's the reason it sounds good. But he was looking for something. He was looking for something founded by God. He was looking for God's way. He wasn't looking to make the promise happen himself. And this is another key element of faith, of real faith right now, because faith is for now. It says now faith. It's not about us making it happen. It's not. We have our own responsibilities, but we're really not the ones making it happen. God will require you to do certain things, but what you do is not making it happen. all you're doing is following the directions. You know, it's like if I download a nice recipe for something, sure, I'm doing the cooking, but I'm following the recipe. The recipe is really responsible for how it tastes. And very often God has given us some kind of recipe. He's given us some kind of instruction. But a lot of times we don't follow it. And what I find with a lot of people that I've counseled and mentored over the years is they tend to overcomplicate things. All God told him to do is get away from your family, get out of your country and go to the land that I will show to you. And I'll bless you, make your name great, make of you a great nation. God didn't even give him too many details. At least not at that point. It wasn't a complicated thing, just get out there and go. And and I posted on my other Facebook account this morning, or was it yesterday? Simplified goals are easier to attain. And this isn't about goals per se, but there's a similarity here. That a lot of times we are overcomplicating things, and God just wants some simple obedience out of us. So many things that we do that we overcomplicate. Hey, God bless you. Like this little piece of property we got here. You know, we've been struggling to try to get a garden going, and all our stuff's been dying because we've had too many cold nights. The little back room that we use for keeping the plants in didn't get enough sunlight, and we had plants that were leggy that weren't going to survive. And every time we tried to harden them off outside, it would be too windy, and the wind would kill the plants. And started exploring on the property. We got hundreds of wild raspberry canes. We've got strawberries growing everywhere. I think. Looks like strawberry plants, and now they're in bloom. The flowers are out, and the bees are coming out, so they're getting pollinated. So there's going to be some strawberries soon. Then we found something else out, that we had this grass fire a little over a month ago. All worried about it. Turned out that the fire happened one day before they start fining you if you have a fire. So I didn't get fined. And it didn't damage anything important. It burned away a bunch of tall grass that I was going to have to either cut or root out anyway. And then some weeds started growing there, and I was pulling weeds, and all the time I was getting bit up by those black flies. And I pulled a couple hundred of these weeds, but there's still more, and it has like one big root system. Like, man, I'm never going to get rid of these weeds. Well, guess what I found out about those weeds? It's called fireweed. It grows wherever there's been a fire. Oddly enough, their expectation, good evening, God bless you. And fireweeds are edible. They're actually quite sweet. They taste good. Another thing that you can eat on this property that I don't have to work for. I don't have to do anything. Just let it grow. I'm trying to see about putting a fence here, but I got to come up with the cash to do it. Because I want to keep the deer out. But at the very least, I bought some fishing line. I'm going to string some fishing line in the trees along the perimeter. So when the deer bump into the fishing line, they get confused and go away. Supposedly that works. I don't know if it does, but I'm going to try it. I don't have the means to put in a fence right now, so I'm going to try that because I don't want the deer eating my raspberries or my strawberries. I got to find a way to scare the rabbits away too. But like I said, we overcomplicate things. If I just manage to fence this place in, I'll be, hip deep in strawberries and raspberries and now fireweed. I don't know how good it tastes, but supposedly it tastes sweet, and it can be eaten. You just shouldn't eat the leaves. Because if you make a tea out of the leaves, it'll get you drunk, apparently. But so, the leaves, no good, but the flowers and stems can be eaten without any ill effects. And that's apparently nutritious. And there's probably other things on this property that are edible. They're just already there, just growing there. I didn't have to do anything for it. Except set my lawn on fire, but we tend to overcomplicate things, saints. That very often God has already been putting things together on your behalf, and He's just waiting for you to finally believe Him and head in the direction that He wanted you to. And usually it's something simple. The only reason I knew about the fireweed was we were getting so frustrated with these things because they were just popping up everywhere. And I'm like, this thing is so invasive. We got dandelions everywhere too. But I'm letting them grow. People treat them as a weed. Dandelions are medicine. And I had a really bad black fly bite on my wrist. I put some squeezed out some dandelion stem on there, and it doesn't even itch anymore. I'd have to use it on the other bites. Dandelions are highly nutritious, got a lot of vitamin C and medicinal properties. So I'm not getting rid of the dandelions. I'm going to harvest a bunch of them, maybe make some tinctures out of it. But that having been said, God will make a way. Stop overcomplicating things. Trust Him, believe Him. Move forward in the direction He pointed you. Through faith, also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged Him faithful who had promised. Therefore sprang there even of one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky in multitude, and as the sand which is by the seashore innumerable. Again, referring to Abraham. Or, Abraham. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. Now, in those days, that was be probably like a man in his 60s now, because Abraham did live to be 170. But here's the point, that this should have been impossible. And now, I said in another broadcast, I suspect that somewhere close to probably half the planet is related to Abraham. At the very least, probably a couple billion people. When God makes a promise, He keeps it, and He keeps it in spades. I would not be surprised. At the very least, 2 billion, maybe more. Yeah, I found out recently that on my mother's side of the family, there's also the last name Medina, unrelated to the Medinas of South America. But the last name Medina originated from, in this case, the Medinas in the Caribbean came from Spain. They were Jews from Spain and got kicked out of Spain in 1492, and they came to the Caribbean. Who would have thought that apparently I'm one of Abraham's kids, and so are so many other people from that part of the world. I mean, I was born in America, but my mother's from Puerto Rico. Abraham's got a lot of kids. Thousands of miles away from where he lived. And I wouldn't be surprised, in all over the world, there's probably other descendants of Abraham. Now, if God could do that, and I've said this before too, your problems are smaller than the Red Sea. God took care of that. God took a man who wasn't supposed to be able to have kids, and his wife was well past her bearing age, and she was barren, and they had a kid. Not just a kid, but a child of the promise, and look how many descendants they got now. We can't even count them. We're not even sure. It says, these all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them far off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from which they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. And this is another thing we really badly need to understand if we're going to move in faith. Those guys died in faith. Abraham didn't get to see in his lifetime the fulfillment of the promise. There are things you may be believing God for that are not necessarily for you. There may be promises God made for you that are actually for people who are going to come after you. There may be things God has promised to you that are going to be revealed and manifested through people that you are intended to influence. Now, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Fathers tend to get most of their honor through their sons. If you don't think that's the case, look at Abraham. He didn't get to conquer the land of Canaan. He lived in it as a stranger, even though God promised it to him. God told him, I'll make of you a great nation. But the nation's called Israel. Isn't that funny? God said, I'm going to make of you a great nation, but it's not called the nation of Abraham. It's called Israel. It's named after his grandson, and that's not even his grandson's original name. God gave him a whole new name. So yeah, part of faith is also trusting that God is not just going to do it, but he's going to do it his way, and it's going to have to be okay. That maybe some of the greatest things that God is going to get out of your life is going to come through somebody your life touched. There was a man, and I can't tell the whole story because I don't want to go really long tonight, but he had been a terrible criminal. So terrible they put him in a nut house. And he got saved in the nut house. And when he got out, he was on fire for God. In fact, I think Leonard Ravenhill knew him. And they spent some time together, traveled together a little bit, stayed in a hotel, shared the same bed. And he would wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and start praising God because he was just so grateful that God had saved him because he'd been such a horrible, horrible criminal. And, Ravenhill says to him, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's like, Brother Ravenhill, let's praise God. He's like, but the people next door might be sleeping. He's like, well, they can praise God with us. This guy had unbridled enthusiasm. One day, God said something to him. He told him to go outside into the gutter, crawl in the gutter, declare the gospel, and keep crawling till you get to the marketplace. He didn't want to do it. God said, well, you told me you'd do anything. You'd do anything for me. So he said, okay, Lord, I'll do it. He got on his hands and knees, crawled down to the marketplace, where there was a group of men hanging out that had known him when he was a criminal. And of course, this got their attention, and they listened to him preach the gospel from the gutter. And it moved them because they knew who this guy was. They knew how bad he was. They knew he was hardcore, man. He was worse than all of them put together. They believed the gospel. They got saved. One man went on to be some kind of missionary in China. Hundreds of thousands of people came to the kingdom, or tens of thousands came to the kingdom through his life. And I think between all of them, it was something like 1 million people got saved through the lives of those men. Because one man had faith. He believed God. One time. Consider for a moment what one act of obedience on your part might do. I know I'm believing that, maybe my little ministry ain't much, and maybe I'll never get to go do anything great, but I am sure hoping and believing for God to use the people that I'm influencing. Abraham was promised a nation, but was named after his grandson. His grandson never got to see the promised land conquered. Long after he was dead, the children of Israel left Egypt under Moses. Moses didn't even get to go to the promised land. Joshua did. Joshua didn't finish conquering the promised land. David did. And though David was a great king, Solomon's reign as king had more splendor, had more wealth, was more famous, was known all over the world. They actually found documents in Tibet where the people there record a visit from King Solomon. Of course, they said he had a flying carpet too. I don't know what that meant, but they knew who King Solomon was at the very least. I don't know if they were exaggerating or if maybe he did have a flying carpet. I don't know. Who knows what's possible? But think of that for a moment. In some translations, if you translate different, it could be flying platforms. So who knows what was going on. But the point is, they knew who he was all the way out to Tibet. Sure, they didn't know who David was. And even Solomon did not fulfill the ultimate destiny of the promise to Abraham. That was fulfilled through Jesus Christ. And we're told in Philippians that God exalted him in the highest and gave him a name that is above all other names. So at the name of Jesus, every knee would bow and every tongue would confess that Jesus is Lord, for the glory of who? God the Father. Still don't believe fathers get their glory out of their sons? Who are you going to father? What are you going to produce in the kingdom? Stop worrying about the results so much. Just obey God. Trust him with the results. Trust him with the outcome. Trust him with the direction. He's not going to lead you wrong. He's not going to steer you wrong. And like it says, for they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to return. Is another thing you got to understand about faith, is that there is no plan B. There is no going back. And as long as you have even an inkling in your mind that you can go back to who you used to be, that you can go back to doing things the old way, that you can go back to your way, you can't walk in a pure faith. And you're always going to struggle in your faith. And this isn't a complicated thing. This is a simple thing. You have to decide, I'm not going back. I'm not going to be the brother I was 20 years ago. I'm not going to be the brother I was a year ago. I'm done with that fool. Are you? You can't even be mindful of it. A lot of us, we dwell on the past. We dwell on what might have been or who we could have been. Believe me, I've been guilty of that myself because of the things I've been through. I went from the Ivy League to being homeless. Don't have time to get into that story. Experienced all kinds of career sabotage, and every time it seemed like there was finally a breakthrough, that I finally caught a break, that God was going to finally bring me out, and it always turned out to be a disappointment, or things got even worse. I've been waiting 20 years for God to vindicate me. Hasn't happened yet. Never got restored. Never got back what was stolen from me. So it'd be very easy to think and dwell on what might have been or what could have been. Would my life have been better? Probably. Yeah, I remember one preacher said to me, he was like, Brother Sam said, I was all right till I got saved. And I was like, yeah, that's true. You don't know how accurate that is. He's like, oh man, don't say that. I was like, what? It's true. But you can't look back. You know, and I've had people try to ask me questions about that, and a lot of times I gotta shut it down. So I don't like telling that story. I don't want to dwell on that. I don't want to look back. I actually had to tell more than one person. I said, look, I don't want to talk about this, because if I start focusing on this and I start thinking about this, I'm not going to be able to get online and preach. Because I'm going to be too busy thinking about how hard my life is and how hard it wouldn't have been. And I'm starting to understand the purpose of it. That all this 20 years of horror was to bring me to a place where I could trust God no matter what, and I could teach other people to do the same. And I can't rely on anything other than God. And like it says, they might have had opportunity to have returned. And this is another reason why people backslide. You know why people backslide? Because they're still looking back. It says they might have had opportunity to return, meaning because they weren't mindful of the country they came from. Because they left it back there. They didn't even have a chance of going back. You want to make sure you never backslide? You want to make sure you never go back to who you were? Stop thinking about it. Stop focusing on it. Start, keep your eyes forward. Makes it a lot easier to continue believing God and trusting God. Because a lot of times the past, especially the past, has a lot of what ifs in it, or a lot of pain in it. It can very easily keep you distracted. And it says, but now they desire a better country, that is, a heavenly. Wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared them a city. What do you really desire? You know, I see a lot of Facebook posts by people who are all, it's always about politics, and don't get me wrong, that stuff matters, I guess, and it's important, but they're so tied up in it. And I've had to say to some of them, especially the ones, every election cycle, you see the same thing. You have people making their supposedly prophetic predictions about who's going to be president and why, and now they're saying, you know, Trump is Cyrus and all this other stuff. And I don't know if I'm the only one noticing that every election cycle, the prophets pick their horses, so to speak. And half of them are wrong, half of them are right, because hey, even a broken clock is right twice a day. And like I've said to some of them, I said, you know, you can choose between King John's kid on the left and King John's kid on the right. Elections are rigged. God hasn't said to me about who's going to win, and I don't care. I really don't. Because there's people from the same royal bloodline that are running. No matter who you vote for, it's going to be one of them. Stop letting that distract you. There's more important issues. They're just a puppet anyway. There's people they answer to. Did you even notice that the 12 apostles didn't try to overthrow Caesar? That wasn't their mission. That wasn't their focus. Their focus was God's kingdom, not the world's. It says God has prepared them a city. God has prepared something for you. It may not be glamorous. It may not be spectacular. But he's prepared something for you. It's just a matter of you getting there. But you can't get there if you're looking back. You're looking sideways. You got your mind on all kinds of other things. It says, by faith Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac. And he that received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said, that in Isaac shall your seed be called, accounting that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. They figuratively received him from the dead, because Abraham was committed. And I can imagine Isaac thinking, you know, where's the lamb? It says that he tied him up, so I don't know if there was a struggle or what. Because I know if that was me and my dad, there would have been a fight. My father would have had to tie me up. But then maybe Abraham had to tie him up. But Abraham was willing to let go of the thing that was most precious to him. And a lot of times, and this is part of the walk of faith, there's going to come a time sooner or later where there's something that's really precious to you, or has become precious to you. And very often it's even tied to what God promised to you. And you got to be willing to let it go. Abraham was ready to sacrifice his son because God told him to. But because by faith he knew God had promised me to give me a nation through this kid. So he was, like it says here, he was believing that God would even raise him from the dead if he had to. I mean, it's like I said to my wife, I think I'm kind of unkillable right now. Not that I'm going to go do something stupid, but I think God will keep me alive until he's done using me. So there isn't really a whole lot that I'm afraid of. And if somebody does manage to kill me and God ain't done, he'll raise me from the dead. Because he's not done. And this is another problem for us. Things that are precious to us. Sometimes it's our own life that's precious to us. Most of us, if we'll admit to it, in the church, we're selfish. It's part of why we treat each other the way we do. Like I was saying in the earlier broadcast today, I was talking about discipleship. And Jesus had said that by this would the world know you are my disciples. By your love for one another. And then look how we treat each other. And it says, by faith, Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith. Because Isaac, when he said that, he wasn't just saying it. He believed it was really going to happen. I mean, it was the father's blessing was treated as an absolute. We tell the story and we act like we almost treat it like fiction, but think about this. Esau was a grown man at the time. And he broke down crying when he found out his father had blessed his brother instead. Think about that for a moment. As much as we like to knock Esau, Esau really believed that his father's blessing had power. Because apparently it did. But Isaac had to have faith that that blessing would even mean anything. By faith, Jacob, when he was dying, blessed both of the sons of Joseph, and worshipped, leaning upon the top of his staff. By faith, Joseph, when he died, made mention of the departing of the children of Israel, and gave commandment concerning his bones. That's why the children of Israel, on their way out of Egypt, took kind of a detour. They went a little bit of a roundabout way. And as much as the historians try to deny that the Exodus ever happened, there was a man that's recognized in history as Imhotep. And some people believe Imhotep was actually Joseph. Because the place where Imhotep was buried is apparently the same place Joseph was buried, go figure. And the timelines are right and all that other stuff. And you look at Imhotep's life and Joseph's life, so many similarities as far as the records are concerned that it looks like Imhotep was really Joseph. But Joseph gave commandment concerning his bones. 400 plus years later, they go there to get his bones. We like to knock the children of Israel, but there was some faith there. And there was faith. It took faith for Joseph to even make that command. One, he had to believe that God was going to take them out of there. And two, he had to believe that God would cause them to obey the command that he had passed down. It was more than 400 years later. And my goodness, pastors and apostles and whatever else you want to call yourselves, you run these churches and you got to do so much conniving, manipulation, and intimidation to get people to do what you want. Truth is, you got a faith problem. By faith, Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents because they saw he was a proper child. And they were not afraid of the king's commandment. It's another thing about faith. like I said before, there's not a whole lot that I'm scared of. That's not because I'm some kind of tough guy. I mean, I guess I'm maybe a little bit tough. I ain't that tough because I got all kinds of injuries and damage to my spine and all that, so I'm not physically what I used to be. But I'm not, I'm not so courageous because I'm so tough. I'm like 5'4". I'm a small guy. I'm not afraid because of faith. Faith will cause you not to fear. Because you've believed God. You believe not only that He is, but He's got to move. It says, by faith Moses, when he had come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. My goodness, I'd love to see some leaders in the church like that. Or rather, some more. I know a few. They'd rather suffer affliction with God's people because they trust God. And I said this before, and I'll say it again. I'm going to keep saying it. We are all coming out together. And it says, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater than the root treasures in Egypt. For he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. So that Moses knew God was going to move. Moses believed God would. Moses went back to Egypt to go get them. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Through faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of blood, lest he that destroyed the firstborn should touch them. Faith will move you to obey God when God tells you to do something that might seem a little bit odd. That sometimes in your walk, God is going to take you places or do things with you where you're going to have to obey God, and you might have to do something that wouldn't seem to make any sense. By faith they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, which the Egyptians attempting to do were drowned. I mean, think about this. This is all these things that are being done by faith. This is some of the possibilities of faith. And in the Exodus account, we're told that they could see the water on either side of them, like it was a wall of water. Now, I know that officially historians try to say it never happened, but the evidence of the Exodus passage is there. They just deny it's there. It's actually a column on either side where they crossed. It was set there by King Solomon as a memorial of the crossing of the Red Sea. And under the water, there's been found small coral reefs that took on the shape of chariot wheels and chariots and people. Go figure. So the evidence is there. By faith the walls of Jericho fell down after they were compassed about 7 days. By faith the harlot Rahab perished not with them that believed not, because she had received the spies with peace. And what more shall I say, for the time would fail me, to tell of Gideon and Barak, and Samson and Jephthah, and David, and also Samuel, and of the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. And others had a trial of cruel mockings and scourgings, yea, moreover, bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn asunder, they were tempted, were slain with the sword, wandered around in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. They wandered in deserts and in mountains and dens and caves of the earth, and these all, having obtained a good report through faith, received not the promise. Now I want to go back here a little bit, because sometimes people that teach on faith, especially on this chapter about faith, they try to teach if you have faith, everything's just going to be awesome. That's not the case. It actually says here that some of them had trials, cruel mockings, and scourgings. Scourging is when they whip you. It says some of them were sawn asunder. It's believed that was a reference to the prophet Isaiah, because according to legend, Isaiah was executed by being sawn in half, supposedly with a wooden saw. That had to really hurt. Still want to be a prophet? It's funny how these days, prophets people act like the prophet has all this, favor with people, and they didn't back then. Jesus sure didn't. I mean, at first he did, but at the end, they were all like, crucify him, crucify him. They were stoned, they were sawn asunder, they were tempted. And it even says they were destitute. I know preachers today like to teach you that you really walk in faith, you're going to be rich. That's not what this says. Some of them lived in poverty, they lived in caves, and they died by torture. And now, I'm not saying that has to be everybody's walk. I'm saying that will be somebody's walk. Hoping it won't be mine. But some of it has been, but it is what it is. But think about it, all these people, it said they obtained a good report through faith. It wasn't that they had faith to have a mansion. It wasn't that they had faith to have a jet or a Rolls Royce. But they had faith concerning who God is and what he asked them to do, what he wanted them to do, and they went and did it, regardless of whatever the consequences might be, because they believed that God would reward them. And it says, of whom the world was not worthy. That some of these people, and this is something you got to understand about faith, that you might walk in faith and you may never come to a place of honor in this lifetime. People may not like you. People may mock you. People may ridicule you. But if you are walking by faith, the world is not even worthy of you. Doesn't mean you got to walk in arrogance, but this is what this is saying. So even if you're going through something tonight and life just doesn't seem to be, you're not living your life like it's golden. Now, if you really are walking by faith, you really trust in God, you got to understand the world's not worthy of you. God does have a reward for you. Your reward is inevitable. You got to keep moving forward. You have to persist in your faith. They received a good report through faith, even though they didn't receive the promise. It says, God having provided some better thing for us, that they without us should not be made perfect. Something I want you to understand is so much of what they were promised it came to pass through people after them. Like I said about the thing with David and the rest of them. That the promise to Abraham unfolded over the centuries, and it's continuing to unfold. There are things God promised to other people, perhaps even centuries ago, that are intended to come to pass through your life. Jesus said, Abraham rejoiced to see my day. Now, there's a lot of conjecture on what exactly that means, whether Abraham was given some kind of prophetic revelation about the Messiah, or that but the implication seems to be that Abraham knew about it in paradise. They rejoiced when Jesus was born. He was aware, that maybe one of the angels told him in paradise that Abraham, hey, Abraham, remember that promise? It's coming to pass right now. The Messiah was just born. Somebody may very well have rejoiced to see your day. That's somebody. And then the next chapter talks about this vast cloud of witnesses. witnesses. All these people have gone before us. There are things they prayed for. I know my grandfather, I've been told, that my grandfather on my mother's side used to pray for his children, and he also would pray for the children who had not, his descendants who had not yet been born. Every night and every morning. Among the other things he prayed, apparently was something he did till he was very old, that he would pray for future generations, even the ones that hadn't been born. And I gotta believe that there were probably things my grandfather prayed for that God is going to bring into the earth through me, through my brother, my sisters, their children. Your life is the answer to somebody's prayer, very likely. There's so much more riding on this than just what we want or we need. And I'm not saying that to put you under some kind of pressure like some preachers like to do and scare you into behaving better. That's not the point of this. The point of this is that if your life is the answer to someone's prayer, if there are things that were promised to saints centuries ago that are intended to come to pass through your life, it means that God is not only able, but He is willing to bring it to pass through your life. I want you to think about that. That so many of the things that we stress out over, the things that we're scared of, the things that we're uncertain about, our life, our marriage, our career, our ministry, God already planned it. He's already made provision for it. It's already on its way. It is inevitable. If you believe. So why not believe? Considering all this, it makes no sense not to. It makes no sense not to believe. So I want to encourage you tonight. Exercise your faith. Maybe you don't have faith for big things right now. Exercise your faith in the small things. I mean, goodness, even people in the who are motivational speakers, they say it all the time that success is not a matter of doing big things. It's a matter of doing a lot of really small things. Start doing the small things. He called you to preach, okay, start preparing sermons. Preach to the mirror, if nothing else. Preach to yourself. He called you to write, start writing. You got writer's block? Here's the secret to beating writer's block. Give yourself permission to write garbage. Write bad stuff. I've done it all the time. Like when I've had writer's block, I just start writing horrible stuff. Trying to write as badly as I possibly can. Usually the writer's block wears off because I start having fun writing something really stupid. I remember one time I was at this event where I wanted to do some networking, but I didn't want to have to work the room because I'm not a very sociable person and I'm not a very likable person. So what I did, it was a writing seminar, and we had to write a story based on 5 words, and they were trying to demonstrate how easy it was to write if you have the right approach. So you had the audience randomly pick words. One of them was Kazakhstan, another one's platypus, the word squishy, tacos, and one other word, I can't remember the other word. And so I decided to write the stupidest story I possibly could, because I had a plan. My plan was that if they asked for any volunteers, my hand was going to shoot right up to make sure I got on the microphone. And so, as it happened, they picked me because because I had my hand up there. I'm waving my hand. They gave me the mic, and I read this crowd a story about a platypus who lived in Kazakhstan, and he didn't like the tacos because they were too squishy. So he left and he did some stuff. I can't remember the story, all of it. But the ending of the story was he overthrew the government in Kazakhstan and became a dictator. And this story was so ridiculous that, of course, the audience was laughing throughout the whole story because it was just so silly and stupid. When the event was over, I ran out of business cards. Everybody wanted to talk to me. I think it even made the organizers of the event a little mad because the crowd was kind of around me instead of them. So if you're called to write something stupid if you have to, but do something. If you're called to do some kind of dance ministry, then dance at home. Because a lot of us, especially those of us who are called to some kind of worship ministry, a lot of times we think it's about a performance, and it is not. A lot of churches have turned worship into a performance, and that's why you don't see people getting healed of diseases when worship leaders are worshiping, because they're not worshiping. They call it worship, but it isn't. But whatever it is that God has called you to do, whoever it is that God has called you to be, start exercising. It's a lot like faith is a lot like lifting weights. You're not going to bench press 500 pounds on the first day, most likely. Start with what you can do. Get some direction. If you don't have direction, find somebody who can give you some direction. And start heading in the direction God wants you to. Now, some things are going to be things you can't do, and some things are going to be things you can't. That's fine. God's got it. I want to tell you guys tonight, God is looking to do the impossible in your life. God wants to answer your prayers more than you want to pray them. God wants to intervene. I mean, come on, 2 Chronicles chapter 16, verse 9 says that for the eyes of the Lord go to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is perfect toward him. If you would just believe God, if you would just trust him, God wants to move on your behalf. He wants to. So many of us, he's just waiting for you to trust him. Yeah, I saw this video of a tornado. And I forget what state it was. This gigantic tornado. I mean, it dwarfed everything around it. It was so huge. And I said to my wife, the pillar of cloud. I wonder if the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire were tornadoes. That would have been scary. That would have been quite frightening. And no wonder Israel's enemies could see it coming. From at a distance, they'd see it miles away, and they're like, oh no, the Israelites are coming. I'm saying that to say this. God wants to show himself strong in your life. God wants to show off through your life. So why don't you just go ahead and trust him? You know, it's like God said, like Jesus had said, did I not tell you if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? Now, either that statement is true or Jesus is a liar. And so I'm going to leave you with that tonight. Didn't he tell you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? Just believe. Don't make it complicated. Just trust God. Trust that He's going to do what is right, and that He's going to do what is best. I hope this was helpful. If it was, please feel free to share it on whatever social media you use. Meanwhile, everybody, God bless you, and God keep you. Brother Sam signing out.